Right, let's see if this is live. Oh damn. If I put my other mobile. Right guys. Just so let's see if you guys can hear me fine, if everything's cool. Whoa, this is what I'm actually trying out is on my iPad for once. Finally clocked it. I realized how to do this. Wa alaikum assalam. People, if you can hear me okay, just let me know. Or I'll just let some of you log on. Put this all on silent. Right, so just gonna see what's going on. Try and make sure the right, okay, so people, Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa, wa ala ibadi alladhina irtada, man bihudahu muhtada, wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa, wa ba'd, fa salamu Allahi alaykum. Let me see. Damn, one of my ensuring I can get right now. Okay, people, what does it say? Sound is good, quality is better. Awesome. What I've done is I've actually see, you know, my iPad Pro, for some reason the Facebook app just wouldn't work on it first, and I don't know why, but it just wouldn't, and now that seems to have been corrected. I think I'm just trying to see if I can push this any further back, if it'll make any more. Maybe not. That's the best I can do. I hope it's not too much in your, not too close to the screen. But anyway, brother, you're from Birmingham. I am indeed. Bromtown. That's where it's all going down. Right now, I know I've released a video. I hope all of you have seen it, on the age of Aisha radiallahu anha at the time of her marriage. Can someone marry a 12-year-old? No, they cannot. Jimmy Darcy. Okay? Hope that answers your question. That here, shukran. This is, see, I've been totally, what can we say, off season since I've made the video clip. Look, no shave, no anything. I'm goddamn just too many things to do, not doing them, lazing around too much. So, right, let's take a music producer. All right, Omar, ruling on looking forward during prayer. Opinion on Ibn Ashur. Ibn Ashur was a legend of this ummah. Shukran, Solomon Yasin, wa alaikum assalam. I look hench. The problem with going to the gym, you never hench enough. Now I'm watching, I just first saw of you a few days ago. Well, mustahsin, ahlan wa sahlan, wa shukran li hudurik. You see Muslims on Vikings. Yes, it's shocking. Oh my God, they've reached Spain. That was during the time of Abdurrahman al-Awsat, the second, and they come twice. The first time they startle the Muslims, second time the Muslims do have some preparation. You can catch that on my Al-Andalus course, which I've completed, an audio course in 13 lectures on Muslim Spain from rise to fall. Right, okay, business, entrepreneur businesses, any and all. Idols, I ate at a restaurant with idol, recite Quran for us. Right, I'm not the best of Qurra. I mean, my recitation is just about okay, that's all. I mean, I don't have a messed up accent or anything, but I'm not a kind of ma ana biqari, okay? I'm not your guy if you want to listen to Sheikh Abdul Basit or Abdul Rahman Sudais or, those people. That's their specialism. We can't, unfortunately, be everything. You can't expect. That's the thing, you see. Like, that's actually the issue with scholars. People assume that you must be It's like saying, I don't know if you're on a screen. Let's say it's like saying let's say actors. You wouldn't expect them to be singers. So it's the same kind of thing that people always put the scholar forward, assuming, and some scholars do have, to be fair, awesome recitation. My recitation is only standard, that's all. Nothing special about it, unfortunately, but that's what it is. There's an outline for Eagle Armani logo on your bag that you're wearing during Salah. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, with wearing logos or images of animals or things like that. It doesn't, I'm sure, haven't I think I've got the Armani logo right there, people. Doesn't affect anything, so it's all good. Right, so I want to tackle some questions first of all that have been kind of raised about this this video I did. Okay, so I've asked for your questions to also be sent to me, but I mean, I want to take a look at some of these things. Okay, I'm just trying to bring up some of these criticisms. You see, somebody critiqued my video, but he said, just watch the video, some very quick thoughts. So, okay. And then he rinses me. Alright, so drum सोने का वक्त. Right. That's my little one. Come on then. बोलो अस्सलाम वालेकुम. अच्छा, बोलो आप कैसे हो? ठीक है, अब जाके सो जाओ. ठीक है, जाओ. Right, so the thing is, this is the person's criticism. He says, he provides his arguments for the post-9 age of Aisha, which he does quite well. It's not an explicit argument, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He says, I feel he needs to provide more cogent reasoning in the following areas. His premise, the Arabs didn't have a precise measure of time. This would apply equally to both the 9 and his post-9 argument. It seems a zero-sum analysis with lack of appreciation. Wow. So, now, first of all, my premise to the discourse on stating that the Arabs were not a people of calculation, what that does is it removes any parameters of certainty from this discourse. It kind of shows how transmissions, whether it was the age of Khadija radiallahu an, or it was when the Prophet became a prophet, or when he passed away, or when battles took place, any date logs were never certain. That's the premise. The premise was not saying, well, okay, proves. It was the backdrop. Okay, so this person obviously clearly didn't understand that angle on why I'm saying it's a premise. I'm not saying it's the backdrop. It's creating the narrative for the discourse. His premise too, he claims it goes against the background. He narrows that background just to the Prophet's life in the year of the sorrow. Right, okay, that's actually not my premise too. My premise too was actually on Hadith absolutism versus relativism. This, what he's talking about, is actually my first argument. The three layers of the evaluation: reality, reports, and ramifications. So he says that it may have been the general norm to marry at that age. Thus, it didn't go against the broader background of the society. It is a confused point. Either it goes against general norms or it didn't. It supposedly goes against prophetic norms at that time, which is at best his interpretive, I suppose he's trying to say his interpretation. He needs to elaborate on this point, else it is confusing and inconsequential. Oh, rather. Well, Sonny Jim. Well, first of all, right, this thing of it may have been the norm at that time. It was not the norm to marry 6-year-old girls. Please bring me the evidence to show. I'm not saying, I answer in my counter questions, that it was not unheard of throughout history in general for certain things like this to happen. That did not make it the norm. Just as I give the example in my counter questions of today underage pregnancies. So you may get a 12-year-old being pregnant and things like this. This is not the norm in, like, let's say the UK. You couldn't say that's the norm, but it's not unheard of. There's a difference. So the thing is that to say, well, you know, oh, this is the norm, please show me how was that the norm. Okay, and please go against the other arguments and how this would have fulfilled any function of marriage. Let alone the fact that when you say marriage to somebody, you must at some level contemplate the other sexually. You must. Like, I mean, if somebody, you're not saying, hey, will you accept a friend request from me on Facebook? You're saying, will you marry me? Now, marriage, by its definition, is a sexual relationship. So, if I'm thinking of marrying somebody, I must be contemplating that person sexually. It doesn't make any sense not to do so, which, once again, is preposterous to assume that for the Messenger of Allah, who is the pinnacle of perfection for us Muslims. The third point he makes, the whole issue of Sahih Hadith many not be matan effectual due to conflict with other usuli interpretative axioms. Sorry, I'm just trying to see how he's written it. Such as an intratextual conflicts, commentaries, elaborate, blah, blah, blah. He does provide good examples. This may be a valid discussion per se, but how does it apply to 9 post-9 evidence? Well, it applies to 9 post-9 and not post-9. It's 9 or late teens, please. Right, get the argument correct, right? So the thing is, it applies to that because it shows that we have several ahadith which we reject. It doesn't matter if they come with a sahih hadith. We do not believe them to uphold the sunnah. We stand for the sunnah, and our loyalty to the sunnah is above our loyalty to just a hadith transmission. That's how it applies to that, and I demonstrate that anyway. Sadly, this critique of the 9 argument, he doesn't offer any single scholastic authority. Right, so he needs to list all the ulama who have argued. You see, this is once again the kind of that kind of culture of silence argument that we have, that list all the people who have said this. Now, let's say supposedly I was to list 5, or I was to list 1, or I was to list 3. Then that would just be followed up with, well, they were a minority. So I do in my ramifications show people like Ibn Shubruma, who said this was haram, Uthman al-Batti, other people. I demonstrated that that's why I had a ramification section. This thing of why didn't ulama tackle it head on, I said that I believed that they tackled it indirectly by looking at the ramifications. Now, I'd like to mention something here. In fact, I'm going to come back to that. That's important. It's to do with criticism and the culture of silence. I'll come back to that. His selective appropriation of the evidences and supposed contentions, some of which are answered effectively in this link. Okay. The whole usul discussion of Ahad Hadith versus Amal versus usuli axioms is a red herring and not useful. Oh, well, I'm sorry it didn't appear useful to you. And that was published on the Ask Imam website, askimam.org. Well, I definitely won't be asking that Imam. Anyway, right, coming back to the point, people, I want to speak about this about criticism and the culture of silence. Okay, this is important because, you see, when we look historically, we have to understand, right-hand people. Ah, this is good, actually. I think this might be disappearing beneath the... So you can't... Right, so... Right, the thing is... I tell you, the 7-Up Mojito is refreshing. Mixed with Pepsi Max. Boom. Right, the thing is, so anyway, my point is, when we look at Islamic history, let's reflect at the, right, people, all, shukran for all that love, seriously, going back out at you, going right back at you, inshallah. May Allah preserve you all and keep you all forever smiling and laughing. Right, the thing is, we have to, for a moment, be true to our past. Let's be real. One lens of looking at the past is through this super pious, this kind of halo effect, a projected halo effect onto the past. That, oh, in the past, everybody they were like semi-angels. You know, oh, ya salam. If they... Allah, they were only ever, you know, thinking of taqwa and worshipping Allah, and they never even had human thoughts. That's nonsense, okay? They were great people, but they were human beings. Now let's look at the reality. Muslims, Islamic culture, Islamic communities, Muslim communities, soon after the Prophet ﷺ and the early communities, you start to see a culture emerging, which lasts right through. This is like a Muslim culture, a Muslim kind of, obviously there's Muslim societies. Now these have certain nuances about them. One of them is that Muslim societies did not generally accept questioning. In general, I mean, they allowed, you see, there's a difference. They did not accept critical thought or did not welcome it. That is the truth. Like, you just have to reflect upon our history. They allowed questions, they allowed curiosity, but they didn't welcome critical thought. That was, the main culture was one of silence, a culture of silence. That if you started asking too many what they would call dodgy questions, but too many upfront questions, you would be blackmailed into becoming blacklisted and anathematized. That people would declare you a kafir. They would kind of shun you and lock you off in society. Now, you have to remember that societies then were not as urbanized as we are today. They were like towns today. I mean, they may have called them cities, but they were, by our standards, like towns. You lived in a society, you had to get by. So, I'll tell you a good parallel for this. You can try this today with your own shuyukh. Go to your shuyukh, go to your pir sahibs, go to your imams, start asking them difficult questions. They may entertain you once or twice. Soon, you'll be told to be quiet. Because people struggle with something that makes them struggle. So, if somebody's going to be asking me critical, like this is what the culture is, like when I have a following, and this is true with shuyukh and imams and qadis and people, when they have a following and a reputation, they don't like being asked very difficult questions. Because it makes them look incapable of responding. Now I know very early on, people may have welcomed that, very early on. So, right after the Prophet's time, the Tabi'een, the Atba'u Tabi'een maybe in the time of Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, they did used to ask a lot of questions. But you even see at that time this culture of silence emerging, that they start telling people off for asking questions. So, this is just asking general questions. How would you feel about critical thoughts? Now, I'm not saying there were never people that didn't ask radical questions. They were. But these individuals were usually like radical minded individuals. And they were very few and far in between. So you do get people that will come, that will emerge throughout history, that just ask the most craziest of questions. But when we look through our Islamic history, they are a few. They do challenge a good example is like Ibn Hazm. He comes along and he challenges everything. He starts challenging the way people think. He challenges their questions, their principles in Muslim Spain. But what do? They burn his books. They throw him in. They try to imprison him. They exile him, throw him into exile. They attack his property. This is very similar with most people who thought very radically. The general Muslim communities would not allow this kind of critical, deeply critical questions. Some scholar may tackle them in his books. He may come up with them, but he will usually tackle them if he thinks he has an answer. So if I think I have an answer, I might say, oh, here's a difficult question which I answered. They won't mention the difficult questions that they do not answer. They will just say, yes, I have had many difficult questions which I still struggle with today. So Imam Malik says that. Other people say, there's questions I've been struggling with for over a decade. He doesn't say what they are, but he will say the questions that he has answered. Now, you will also see a lot of these radical kind of thinkers that do emerge throughout history. They usually emerge in a time when there is social chaos. So Ibn Hazm is a good example. In his time, there's other people who are radically thinking as well in Muslim Spain. But what era is that? That's one of the weakest eras of Muslim Spain, when they've split into 22 different little kingdoms, and they're all fighting each other, and the Christian, Alfonso VI is heavily powerful, and all Muslim states have to pay tax to him. And why? Because on the hierarchy of Maslow's needs, if you like, people are more worried about survival. You have a less chance of being attacked over these kind of things because people are too busy, preoccupied with more essential needs like survival, ensuring the safety of their family, ensuring their work and things like this. So they're not too fussed when somebody's disagreeing on a fiqhi mas'ala. Even though, despite that, some of them still, like Ibn Hazm, because he made an absolute point of it, of questioning everything, therefore he still is attacked. His books are burnt. He actually says, this is a good point, he says, one of his response, دعوني من إحراق رق وقاغد وقولوا بعلم كير الناس من يدري. That's his poem. Right? He says that, don't burn my books. Leave my books alone. He says, and speak amongst the masses with knowledge. Debate me so people can see who is upon certainty. And this, now why am I saying that? Look at Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah is, although, I don't see him in the same regard as I see Ibn Hazm. I see Ibn Hazm as an absolute legend. Ibn Taymiyyah had definitely some amazing qualities to him, but I see him not in the same light or of the same caliber. But Ibn Taymiyyah is another good example, right? Ibn Taymiyyah arises at the time that there is this whole social confusion and chaos with the Mongols and the whole Tartars and things like this, and this the whole region has been destabilized, and this is what's going on. So he comes up and he has radical kind of thought processes, and to be fair, he does have, and credit, you should always give credit where it's due, and he has some amazing fiqhi fatwa. I completely disagree with his theology, which I see as quite anthropomorphic, but I definitely agree with his way of thinking in fiqh. He was very maslaha based, very based on reason. So he says, like, can a menstruate, for example, a woman during her menstrual cycle, can she continue doing her tawaf around the Kaaba? Because the early hadiths say you can't. But then he says, well, in his day and age, obviously, what are women supposed to do? Because the Muslim population has increased. They can't just sit back, because people will move on and you'll get lost and things like this will happen. So he says that yes, she can. And he says there's a fatwa of Imam Abu Hanifa, we're going to go by it. We don't care. And so he has this kind of way of thinking as well, but he does it at a time of chaos. So Muslims, it's like they're not too fussed about these things. There's greater calamities going on. So we have had this culture of silence, and we still have it today in this urbanized, post-industrial, post-modern world in the West. Go to your local shuyukh, ask them questions. Ask them. They will tell you off after a moment. I guarantee you, you can put my words to the test. Take it to the best shaykh. He may answer one or two questions, but if you can ask him, let's say he gives you the opportunity, and you start asking, ask him difficult questions. He'll answer one or two, and then he'll just tell you, he'll say something like, look, listen, what is the problem with these things anyway? And when you go down this road and everything. But he's not answering the question. Now, so why am I saying this? Right? What is up with this whole? And I'll give you a good example. This is a personal example, yeah? I studied when I did my Mufti course, our Grand Mufti was one of the key students of Mufti Taqi. Right? So one of the modules we did in our Mufti course was to do with medical issues, medical matters, contemporary medical matters, and we were looking at things like organ transplant and stuff like this, and I was looking at blood transfusion. Now, I struggled with an issue. I struggled with this understanding that blood is impure, because I don't accept this, okay? I do not believe blood is impure, right? So I struggled with it at that time. It came across me and I started to look into it, and I couldn't understand how blood is impure. So I started to look into all the evidences, and I wasn't convinced at all, because we believe by default, according to the law of defaults, that by default, al-asl fil ashya, al-asl fil a'yan, at-tahara, that by default all things are pure unless proven otherwise. And that's how Imam Malik's madhab is. So he says, life necessitates purity. So every creature, including humans, including a pig, is pure. And even if a pig was to lick you, or his saliva, or his sweat, it is pure. This is Imam Malik's fatwa. Hence, when the Sahih hadith of a dog licking a bowl came, he rejected it. He said this does not make any sense. Right, so the thing is, now I asked, well look, if by default everything is pure, why is blood impure? So I asked the Grand Mufti of our madrasa, and he said to me, I remember I caught him at this place, like first he was busy, and then we caught him, and he said, like, walk with me and ask me. So I was asking him, and he said to me, well, that's because of the verse in the Quran, حُرِّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الدَّمُ, that these things have been made haram for you, that حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةُ وَالدَّمُ وَلَحْمُ الْخِنْزِيرِ, and so on and so forth. These things have been made haram for you, forbidden. I said, well, that's fine. I accept that we're not allowed to drink blood. It's been made haram. It used to be one of the pagan practices, and Islam has forbade it. I understand that. It may have harms in it, things like that. But why is it impure? Because he goes, well, it's been made haram. I go, well, not everything haram has to be impure. So, for example, poison, drinking poison is haram. Poison is not impure. right? Many substances could be haram, even according to the Hanafi madhab. So many intoxicants which are non-alcohol could be haram, but they're not impure. So heroin is haram to consume. It's not impure. So I said, look, how does, this, there's an assumption here that there's talazum, that there is an inherent attachment between the two. That if something is haram, it must be impure. I go, that's not true. So he, so he just punched me. He just gave me like an uppercut to the ribs. I was like, okay, thanks. That was his response. Like his response was like, and he said, shut up. That was his response, like, shut up, and walked off. Like, I was like, all right, thanks, Mufti Saab. What the hell? You see, like, so this is the reality that we are facing. Now, you see, why am I saying this? Well, you see, because within the Muslim communities, when you ask too many questions, people will start threatening you that they will declare a fatwa of kufr on you. You will be a kafir, or we will declare you a kafir, or you will be outside the fold of Islam, your nikah will be batil, your children will be illegitimate, your janazah will not be read, your blah blah blah, you must renew your tawbah, you must make public declaration of your shahada. You see, this today bothers people in this world. In this world, it bothers people when people say, oh, they're calling you a kafir. How do you think they felt back then, when places were close-knit communities? Your whole life would have been brought to a standstill. Now, with that thought in mind, I want you to fast forward to where we are today in the West. Now, you see, for a non-Muslim, these things are irrelevant. As if a person was a non-Muslim, you calling him a kafir, there's nothing you can blackmail him with. There's no pressure you can put on him. In the past, Muslim communities were always locked into Muslim communities. There was some migration, tijara, business, trade, but they weren't like today. Non-Muslims, in essence, didn't really know too much about Islam. They knew that, okay, they worship a God called Allah, they have a prophet called Muhammad, they have a holy book called the Quran, and they may have heard of one or two key issues, but they didn't know the intricacies of Islam. But what's happened in the last 100-200 years, and especially in recent times, the intricacies of Islam have been made public to the non-Muslims. So you can't emotionally blackmail them. You can't silence them. They will ask the questions. And they will ridicule it. They will ridicule it. They will mock it, because there's nothing you can do to intimidate them. So this is the problem that the Muslims are facing today. This is one of our greatest challenges. Right, we have to understand this, that we are in an age where now our Islamic information has been divulged to non-Muslims. They've been granted access because it's been made in English. I mean, it's been made available in English. Things have got out there. They've done specialisms in their Orientalist studies. They've done PhDs on Islam, masters. They've got atheists that study religion. You've got Christians that study religion. They found inconsistencies in our religion. And with them, you can't use this, hey, I'm going to call you a kafir, I'm going to boycott you, I'm going to do this, we're not going to pray your janazah. To them, this is a win, absolute victory. So they will now blast what they have, right, on the screen. They will say, hey, answer this. So this is why it's so important to stop shying away and to embrace, be confident about your deen. There is nothing in Islam, I reassure you, nothing in Islam, from the true understanding. I don't mean how weirdos and wackos want to believe things, but how the true understanding of Islam, which is based, I believe, on reason. there is nothing that is incongruent with our age or our era, or that is irrational. I do not accept that there is anything irrational. I mean, this is my understanding from where I stand today. Allahu A'lam, but this is how I see things. So, and I'd like to highlight another point. I'm sorry for going on, but I think this is important. I'd like to highlight another point, and that is when you are debating or discussing with non-Muslims, you have to come out of the Muslim fiqh debate parameter. You are not debate. You see, what Muslims, a lot of Muslims do, they make this mistake. They're only used to arguing with Muslims. So when they speak to non-Muslims, they try to use the same parameters. But it's dumb. So for example, this is a typical Muslim debate. I'm a Maliki, so I'm debating a Hanafi. I'm going to say, but Imam Abu Hanifa said this as well. I got you. You know, how are you going to get out of that? So I'm debating a Salafi now. So I'm going to use a revered figure like, hey, but Ibn Taymiyyah said this. I got you. How are you going to get out of that? Because you're stuck. This is a catch-22 now. It's a dilemma situation, because if you are refuting me for this point, well, Ibn Taymiyyah used the same reasoning. This scenario does not work with non-Muslims. You have to grow up. You know, saying to non-Muslims, hey, well, Orientalist so-and-so didn't even pick an issue with this point. It's dumb. Saying, hey, you know, the king, King Henry allowed to marry, you know, a younger... It doesn't make a difference. They don't care about King Henry, or, you know, they don't care about Shakespeare, or they don't care about Darwin. They care about his views, but not about his ethics. These arguments don't work with non-Muslims. So to say to a non-Muslim, like I had somebody say to me today that, oh, your arguments are so silly because you're tackling questions. This was so easy to tackle. All you had to say was, oh, so-and-so Orientalists who had problems with Islam, even they didn't have a problem with this. What a stupid, dumb, retarded, pathetic point of view. Who cares what those, you know, people thought of the past? These people are saying, I'm asking you now. I don't care what those people said. You see, you're imposing a false paradigm onto these people. They don't have these restrictions. They have free thinking. So it is really important that when you get into a discussion with a non-Muslim, don't try to do these ones like, hey, the founding fathers had this, or, you know, during the time of, I don't know, William the Conqueror, he married somebody. Nobody cares about bloody who William the Conqueror married or he didn't marry. Nobody cares. It's not about, you see, they don't consider themselves bound by their usul. They're not. This isn't a madhab, okay? So we have to grow up beyond our... Anyway, people, I hope that's of some help. Let's take some questions, because I can see my iPad battery is going low, and I know so I don't want to miss things. Okay, let's take a look at some questions. Can you recommend, Robin, can you recommend an online school to study Islam? Whoa, I don't know really, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of things online that are awesome. I'm not sure exactly what Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, if Zaytuna has that kind of facility. If it does, I'm sure it will be awesome. I know Ustad Noman Ali Khan, through his Bayyina, has some awesome stuff. But I don't know, actually, to be honest. I've done some basic courses on how to practice Islam. The audio are available. There's an elementary called the Ashmawiyah, which covers purification, prayer and fasting in 6 audio lectures. There's the Foundations of Islam by Qadi Iyad in 20 audio lectures. Both of these are available free. They're on Facebook. You can run a search for them. I have also done a video on how to perform the Salah according to the School of Medina. This will be released shortly. We are editing it now. And I will take up some classes soon. I keep promising people, but I don't know about schools. I don't know, honestly. Mustahsin Bukhari, I had seen my parents following Islam. Nor a day passed. This hadith shows it's impossible. Okay, shukran. Right, okay, so I can't see any more questions here. Right, okay. I wanted to actually, you know what, can I tackle some questions somebody raised? He's a non-Muslim. He raised them on Facebook. But then because he started to troll, I did have to have him blocked. But not, I reassure you, not because of his questions, okay? Just because he was getting annoying, that's all. And I will take his questions. So, you know, this thing of like, I am not embarrassed or shy of Islam, okay? My deen, I am, thank you very much, confident for it. And if you show me a problem with it, I will accept it if it is a problem, and I will reassess what I'm looking at. I'm not, you know, I accept this deen upon certain, like upon my, like I accept it, not just because I was born as it, okay, as a Muslim. I'm going to try and bring up this person's, bloody hell, don't say. Oh, god damn. Right, so this is, let me try this phone. He raised some good questions actually, which I thought, you know what, I thought I'd love to actually answer those questions. See, people run away. I actually enjoy answering these kind of questions. Let me see. What was his name? He had a strange name. I'm just trying to bring up some of his. Okay, he put a lot of questions. I'm just going to take some. Okay, I'm going to try and take, because last I checked I had 10% on the iPad. This is an iPad Pro I'm going from, so next time I will ensure I have it fully charged. But right, so I know you've never seen or read the following. Anyway, right, thank you. Something Mark, his name is, I can't pronounce the first name. A child resembles whichever parent climaxed first. Okay. This is a hadith in Bukhari. This is his criticism towards Islam. Well, first of all, he's got a list. That is not true. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that a child takes his resemblance from his parents. He said that they have, and he said their fluids, this is the term, that when their fluids are combined, one of them has an overwhelming factor. Well, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but well, sir, the thing is, this is what we would today describe as phenotypes. Okay, you have phenomes, a collective set of phenotypes and genotypes. So when the genome, when our genes are obviously compiled, those which become manifest, right, and that is a result of obviously active, and you have recessive alleles and DNA as well. So a mother's DNA and a father's DNA are both combined. Okay, but one of them takes precedence for the phenotype, for what will, so a child may end up looking more like the father rather than the mother. So let's say the mother had blue eyes or green eyes and the father had brown eyes. Now the child will still carry that gene of, let's say, the blue eyes or the green eyes, but if he had brown eyes, that's because the other gene was active. The DNA for that was active. The allele became active, and the other is a recessive allele. So the information is still there, and the child can still pass it on to his future offspring, right? Although with less percentage of it becoming active. Right, okay, this is now on 5%. That doesn't look good, does it? You know what? Let me see if I can bring a quick charger. Just one moment. One moment, people. Right. Right, so sorry about that. Let me see if I can get this charger to do anything else. I mean, I don't... I've put it on there, but I don't know whether it will hold its... Right, so let's see what it charges. Okay, so that's the point. Okay, so that is not a... Oh, damn, it's come out of that. That is not a contradiction, and the hadith does not speak about climaxing, okay? It's not speaking about the orgasm. It's speaking about which of the fluids overtake in terms of having an active as opposed to a passive effect. And obviously the Prophet wasn't going to use the word DNA, right? But he used the term fluid because that was addressing the people of their time. He says here, Satan causes yawning. Hadith in Bukhari. Now you have to understand something. Look, the Prophet ﷺ spoke in what we call generally hyperbole, okay, which is like exaggerative speech to kind of get a message home. Now, very often, when the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is trying to get people to do things, he would say this is like it's a shaitan to do this. It doesn't mean the thing is a shaitan. So when the Prophet told people that, look, when you yawn, cover your mouth. Zara, up jao. See, a rebel doesn't listen to me. Right, making faces at me. Right, so the thing is, now, so an example of this is in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that al-musafir, a traveler, is a shaitan. Wal-musafiran shaitanan. And if two people travel, they are two devils. But وَالثَّلَاثَ rakb, and three people are a traveling group. Now, why was he saying this? One person traveling doesn't become a demon. But that's because it was endangering them. They were in a time when there wasn't too much safety around. And the Prophet would use this kind of like preacher language to drive the message home. He was in a society when that's the kind of language that people responded to. He says in Bukhari, spoons should be covered before going to bed. And he thinks that's a contradiction. That's not a contradiction. And the hadith doesn't actually say spoons, right, for his information. It says vessels. And this is because of hygiene. Animals used to come in, they would lick things. And obviously it could cause infections and diseases. Oversleeping is caused by Satan urinating in one's ear. Now this is not, once again, it is hyperbole. This is what it is. It's not, this is the Prophet ﷺ using what we would call like a religious speak. Like it's preacher kind of language or a preacher tone to drive a message home. Of people who were just being lazy or weren't being active. And you have to remember the society they lived in. The society they lived in. अच्छा ये लो क्या कह रही हो आप भी जवाब दे दो let her answer first अच्छा अब जाओ oh अच्छा won't listen to me this is a problem I tell you so I was going to say forget it, people are they're gonna hold me to, they're gonna lynch me. I was going to say that's why I was gonna argue for the reasons or the arguments for contraception there for a moment. But the thing is now, right, So the Prophet ﷺ is using this kind of oversleep in a society when people they have to kind of, they have to get things done. It was a very struggling society. It was partly hunter-gatherer, partly they had some level of agriculture. They were already, food was scarce. Existence was always critical. Like, you don't know whether you could be attacked by neighboring tribes. It was not a society. Right, so the thing is, you couldn't have people, it was not a society for luxury, to kind of say, well, you know, everybody sleeps till noon and so on. So this was important. Right, okay. Right, so the person says here, a man should only spit to his left. Now you have to understand that this is in line with certain cultural practices. Right, the Prophet ﷺ, you see, this thing of the left and right, he brings this up quite a bit. This was something... So the thing is now, you see, the Prophet, societies enlarged. The Prophet did not demonize the left. Okay, like people think, oh, being left-handed or something like this is... Being left-handed is awesome. I'm left-handed, and right. So the thing is that there's nothing wrong with being left-handed. There's nothing. It's just societies in general have this culture. They've had it for a while. Okay, they preferred the right for certain reasons. Okay, people generally are right-handed. Okay, so predominantly, like what they say, only 10% of people are left-handed. So society in general always made things for the right-handed, and hence people would, even in England, they would walk on the left, so it would allow them to kind of pull out the sword from the right and things like this. And right. Right, so the thing is now, right, so the thing is now, right, so this is important, that societies have these structures. Like, people used to consider the right more, like they used to see a kind of optimism in it. Now, if something, the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, that if something, like, كَانَ يُحِبُّ التَّفَاؤُلِ, if something had a positive kind of optimistic, like an omen value to it, not a religious value, but people saw it as a kind of good luck to do something, he liked that. But he disliked and detested anything to do with this kind of bad luck culture. So this thing of left and right, these were kind of societal practices that people saw. And it's mainly because people were right-handed. So you have to remember, this was a society, look, let's remember something. This was a society where hygiene was obviously, there was a question mark, because water was scarce. People, when they would go to the toilet, they would have to use stones. They would have to, and you would be eating, and you would be doing, so they would use, and the Prophet emphasized using the left hand, because he knew people would not eat with the left hand. And then he discouraged people eating from the left hand, which was what they were doing anyway. And then he said, and he used religious speak to do that. Like, oh, a devil would do something like that. This was hyperbole. It was not realism. Okay? Just like when the Prophet saying that the sun goes and prostrates to Allah and takes permission to rise, this was hyperbole. It was not something which was... Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh did not accept that to be literal. And today we know it not to be literal. But the point is that this was a language that the Prophet was using. And we have to understand that. He then says, oh, a person should wipe their butt. His language. Alright, so the thing is, a person should wipe their butt with an odd number of stones after defecating. Bukhari. Right, you see, once again, you have to understand that the Prophet took things to the odd number for people, because to them it was like normally people would have done things in, like, let's say normally people do things once and they do it again. But the Prophet, he was like saying it, what he was saying is do it that one time more. That one, making it an odd one more. Why? Because look, you're going to the toilet, you don't have water. Or some people did have water, but many people didn't. So you're using stones, you're using other things to kind of clean yourself. Do it that one time more. Be more hygienic. This is why, because people normally, a normal person would have done something once and probably done it again. That's it. Which made it even. Like an even. And the Prophet was saying, hey, do things an odd number of times. Because he knew he knew that they would do it more than once anyway, but now they would go that one more and be more hygienic. Right. So the thing is, and he's mentioned, right, okay, he's mentioned here, right, I can't go through all of these, but let's take another one as well. Right, so Satan sleeps in one's nose, so water should be snorted each day. I'm not sure of the wording of that hadith in essence, but let's take his word for it for now. Once again, this is religious speak. The Prophet was addressing a people who were used to this kind of language. Okay, they were used to this kind of a language. You have to understand this. This kind of religious hyperbole was the narrative, but the kind of social speech of the time that made an impact. So the Prophet he wants people to keep clean, and you have to remember, in desert surroundings, dust is quite often trapped in people's noses. And this can bother people. So the wudu emphasizes rinse the mouth and clean the nose, because there would be dust stuck in there. Now, this is detrimental to people's hygiene in general. So the Prophet has made this a part of our daily ritual. And then he's saying that it's as though you've got a devil in there. That clean it out. This is once again religious speak. It's nothing to be so... but anyway, I want to address some of his questions, because I thought he... and he said the same thing about the private parts. The penis should be held with the left hand when urinating. Once again, because people would often eat with the right hand. So this would prevent illnesses, it would prevent stuff when water is scarce, that they would differentiate. So even if certain unnecessary germs and things like this were being transmitted, there was at least a level of barrier. Now please understand these kind of things, okay? Now I'll enter one last one. Now the thing is, right, the bathroom should be entered with the left foot first. This is false. Bring me a hadith to show that. Bring me a hadith to show the Prophet ﷺ said the bathroom should be entered with the left foot. Because they never had bathrooms in his time. So they used to go into the field. So at what point would you use the left foot? At what point does the field start? At what point does the bathroom start? This is nonsense. Right, so that is absolutely fabricated. Once again, demonstrates ignorance from people. And Muslims do say this as well. And this is why Imam Malik did not accept this. You know, this left foot first in the bathroom. He did not accept that you couldn't read du'as inside bathrooms. He did not accept this because he said, like, where would a bathroom begin? Like what? I just put a door in a desert and anything after that door is the bathroom. And so where does the bathroom begin? So let's say I can't do dua in my bathroom. So today my bathroom is this size, and tomorrow I knock down that wall and it becomes a bit larger. So now I can't do it in that section. I can't say a dua in that section. So what Imam Malik said was that this was during the actual time of going to the toilet, not about in bathrooms and things like this. Okay? So I hope, people, that's been of some help. I want us to understand that, look, we are in very difficult... चलो बैठो यहाँ पे. The thing is now, look, thing is now, right, that look, people, we are in very, we are in very challenging times. अरे बात तो सुनो. कौन है बे? Right, so okay, go on. Off you go, off you go, off you go, off you go. Off you go, off you go. Ciao, 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 ciao. Right, so the thing is, look, we have to understand that we are in critical times. People with unprecedented access to Islam will be criticizing it. And we have to, and it's an opportunity for us as well to ask questions. We shouldn't be insecure about asking about our own deen, and we should be able to, like, if something's bothering us, we should be able to discuss it. I'm not saying, look, I will have all the answers, or somebody, but maybe somebody else will have that answer. Do you understand? And this is out of loyalty and security and love for this deen, that we are true to it. Okay, so that's my thing. I think it's 11. It's coming to 11 o'clock. Should I see any quick questions on here? White vinegar, spirit, is there a difference? Both are okay. That's fine. Rolling up trousers for the ankles. No such thing. I mean, many of the ulama, Ibn Abdul Bar and other people said that was to do with the custom. Ibn Abdul Bar and many other people said this was to do with the age, the custom of their time. Right, so the thing is, where this was not an issue, where the uncovering of the ankles was not a custom of culture of arrogance, that did not apply. Is network marketing halal? I'm not sure what that is, but it sounds halal. And you have to remember, by default, everything is halal. By default, everything is halal unless proven otherwise. Right? Mary, that is an excellent question. Why do children suffer globally if Allah is the most merciful? And that is one of the most troubling questions. We are... Right, so the thing is, but that will take a lot more to answer. To be honest with you, I'm not... Whoa. Better. Okay. The thing is that will take a lot more to answer. And I'm not saying I have a holistic answer, to be honest with you. I do feel that a lot of suffering is not, I do not accept that the suffering is caused by Allah. I feel that a lot of suffering in general is either human, as in human afflicting suffering onto other humans, or is done by the, as Allah says, مِمَّا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ, by what you have done. So for example, people have, they've done things like, let's say human beings have created pollution. Now that pollution has resulted in, that, let's say, that pollution has now resulted in acid rain somewhere, and it's resulted in atmospheric changes, and people have got sick and things like that. But that resulted by مِمَّا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ, with what some human beings did. Now, also, I would say things like, you see, we are a product, like our, we have a genetic makeup to us, which came from our parents who made choices, which came from their parents who made choices, and the DNA is always being replicated. And sometimes part of its replication is that it makes small errors during replication all the time. This results, unfortunately... Okay. This, अच्छा पापा को बात करने दो. Right, so the thing is, this results unfortunately at times in cancerous cells being born because of the replication and things like this, and obviously illnesses or diseases, and so I don't believe Allah is doing that. I believe that is part of the law of physics and nature that have been set in motion. Okay, so sometimes people have chosen to take up residence at a particular part, or their ancestors chose to take up residence at a certain location which happened to be resting on tectonic plates. Now, from the laws of nature is the tectonic plates would move time to time, which will result in an earthquake. It's not their fault, and they suffer as a consequence. I mean, this is a lengthy thing. May Allah grant ease to each and all. I mean, it is a very difficult question as well, and obviously Islam then does try to grant some ease by saying that, look, about the reward for patience and things like this, and making dua. And I do believe there is intervention, but intervention is usually not at a breaking the laws of nature level. It's usually at a within the kind of miracles, the tiny miracles within, which are unlikely but not impossible. At that level, there, Allah does allow this kind of response. But Allahu A'lam, may Allah make things easy. May Allah increase my knowledge, my ability to answer these kind of difficult questions. You have to remember that sometimes one of my teachers said to me, may Allah grant him Jannah, he was martyred and assassinated once again for somebody who would speak the truth even though people didn't like it. His name was Mufti Atiq or Rahman, and a great scholar, taught us Tirmidhi. And he said to us in a lesson, he was also a graduate of, he studied, he did it in the Indo-Pak world, but also in Medina University and other things, and he used to teach us in Arabic. And he said to us once that, he said, look, when you get questions, he said, I know your first thing is to ask people, like, hey, what's the answer? Like, ask a sheikh. Like he was telling us in our final year. He said, your thing is to ask your teachers, like, hey, give me the answer. Give me the answer. And he said, look, but they're human beings like you. For a moment, try to come up with the answer yourself. He said, just try. Like, because you're only asking people who are men like you who are trying to come up with answers. So he said, look, when a question hits you, try and come up with the answer for yourself. You try and come up with it. And you never know, sometimes you might do a better job than those whom you ask. And as the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, وَرُبَّ حَامِلِ فِقْهٍ إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ أَفْقَهُ مِنْ. And many people will carry knowledge to somebody, meaning they may teach somebody something who will turn out to be more knowledgeable than them. And wow, what a... Right, let's take some final things and call it a wrap, people. I know you guys are probably thinking, what the hell's wrong with this guy? I know he's a vampire, but we're not. Somebody clarifying it for me. Look, the music, Omar, say no more. I don't believe music to be haram. I've answered this in some of the previous sessions. Check the whole details there, please. Alright, so vast for and against. Question is, if we have a chain of going back to Prophet, no, do other religions have this chain? Mustahsin, the Isnad is something Islamic. It is a phenomenon of the Islamic tradition. I don't believe other religions have that. I could be wrong, but I don't believe they do. Robin, your mother is watching. Well, Robin's mother, assalamu alaikum. It's great to see that you're watching. I hope some of this made sense to you. Right, but muchas gracias, muchas gracias. Right, okay. So the thing, adoption in Islam, how does it work? I believe adoption, sajida, is not only permissible, it's encouraged. This will rest, the same thing. You see, if somebody is young and small, then adopting them, I believe that what will take place is called like the Westermarck effect anyway, as they say in psychology, that why siblings do not have... God damn, so such a nuisance. Right. Why siblings do not have sexual attraction to each other is what psychologists describe as the Westermark effect. And that will develop, I believe, naturally anyway if you share residence for a long period of time whilst growing up. So I think in that sense, in my understanding, although technically you are not their parents, as in like genetically and biologically, but I believe in all rulings you will be considered like their parents. And if they've spent that kind of time, I don't mean like fostering where they just spend 6 months with you or even 12 months. I mean where they actually live with you and grow up and take, you know, your name and do the whole thing. I believe in that sense we should treat them like actual children. It would be impermissible based on that understanding, if that's how the context has been, really, that they shouldn't intermarry with their siblings and things like that. And I believe that they would be, because of that, in light of the maslahah, like mahram, they would be a mahram for you. That's my understanding. That is given that they have spent that kind of time with you from a young age. Obviously, if they come as an adult and they only spend 6 months with you, then that's not what I'm talking about. Okay? So I hope that helps. People, let's... Whoa. They're going to get some serious... my library's going to be... It's going to be destroyed in a moment. Right, okay, people. With that, I think I'm going to leave you to it, inshallah. If you do have any questions, reach out to me on Facebook. If you're not already following me, do follow me, add me. If you have any queries, you can write to me. If you're on Snapchat, you can add me as Malm, M-A-L-M 2014, 2014. That's Malm 2014. And you can send me questions there as well. I do try to respond. Right, so I'll leave you with that. Inshallah, if you haven't watched my video on the age of Aisha, the complete one with the Q&A, then please do so. If you find it of any interest, inshallah, I mean, take notes, like it, share it, maximize the benefit. And inshallah, till next week or next session, take good care of yourselves. Remember me in your du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.